It's time for the chip race.
For strategy this week, we're joined by the back-to-back GPI ladies number one. She is a two-time bracelet winner. She is, of course, Krissy Bicknell. Krissy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
It's day 2 of the Nottingham Millions, and it's a hand versus my co-host here, Dara. So I'm keen to get both of your perspectives. For fun, though, let's not reveal Dara's hand until the end.
Okay.
Blinds are 15k, 30k with a 30k big blind ante. Playing 2.5 million. Dara opens to 60k under the gun plus 1. 8-handed. The button calls, and Krissy playing 1.4 million, about 47 big blinds. You call with pocket fives in the small blind. Nothing interesting there. So let's just move straight to the flop where this hand starts to heat up. The flop comes King of Hearts, 7 of Diamonds, 5 of Spades. Krissy, you check. Dara, you also check. And the button bets 115k into 240k. Krissy, you call. No doubt this is a pretty dry board, but would you ever mix in a raise with bottom set here? And if not, why?
Yeah, definitely. I think that a lot of players most likely still continue with their King X. The button can definitely have kind of a wide flatting range. I didn't know the player specifically. Probably the more standard play is to raise, to be honest, especially if you unblock the top pair combos. Most people aren't going to fold King, Queen, King, Jack, King 10. But I think calling is interesting as well. I think in the moment what I thought was the player on the button was possibly just c-betting. I don't want to say mindlessly, but, it checked to him and he was like, oh, I'll bet and see if I can win the pot. And, if I raise, then all of a sudden the other players in the hand can easily fold a king or are kind of forced to be in a really awkward situation. And I don't give any room for anyone else to get chips in, quite honestly.
That makes a lot of sense. Dara, you also call. What range of hands would you play this way so far?
It's a very dry board, so there's not a lot to protect against. 8-6 and 6-4 are the only real draws, and Krissy probably doesn't have those. The button may or may not have them. So I would play a lot of marginal hands this way, pairs below a king. Don't see the point of betting them, but I'm also going to mix in some very strong hands as well, obviously, so that my range isn't just completely capped in this spot either. So I can also have kings, ace, king, those types of hands as well. I think quite a lot of my continuing range just plays this way. Similar to Krissy, I didn't know the player on the button. I had the very strong impression he was recreational. The one tendency I kind of picked up on him, I was at the table longer than Krissy, I think, was he did always seem to bet when checked too. So because of that, I think in some spots where I might lead or c-bet more against other types of players, I think against him it makes a lot of sense to check my stronger hands as well, because I do feel he's always going to bet.
That makes an awful lot of sense. Well, to the turn, it comes the 2 of clubs. So the board now reads King of Hearts, 7 of Diamonds, 5 of Spades, 2 of clubs, still rainbow. Krissy, you now opt to lead third set into both players, 220k into 595k. The button could have been stabbing on the flop, as we mentioned, but Dara pretty much always has to have a value hand of some description. Maybe he has 8-9 of Diamonds, Hearts or Spades, but that's kind of it for the no pair hands. Mm-hmm. What are the advantages in your mind of leading this turn? Does it check around far too often if you don't?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at, is I don't anticipate Dara to lead the turn as well into the flop c-better. So if I'm thinking that the guy in the button is just kind of mindlessly betting a really wide range and not a lot of value, and now I know that Dara has value since he overcalled the c-bet, I'm just thinking that this is going to get checked through far too often, because now this guy in the button's probably going to slow down. I can't really see him continuing with like random bluffs. And not only that, but he might be a player that decides to check back a hand that he even could continue with for value. Like maybe he's scared with King Queen. I mean, with King Jack, you still might want to check there. As the button, if you have King Jack or something like that, like I would be very suspicious by now getting 2 callers. I'm not certain, but I think that my image is somewhat known to be looser or aggressive or crazy. So now I feel like, well, maybe what I can do is just lead turn, lead river and get 2 streets myself.
Good stuff. Well, Dara, you call again and the button folds, not completing the action. Any chance you have 8-9 suited is gone. I think you would also fold pairs that aren't King X or better, or maybe you'll contradict me on that. If I'm Krissy, I'm asking myself the question, would Dara ever not see bet aces, ace king or king queen? For our listeners, how important is that question to ask yourself at this point when trying to range a villain?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had alarm bells going off in my head because I was like, this is very suspicious. I was like, what is happening? Like you said, maybe he'll check queens and call on the flop once, which is debatable itself. But I think on the turn, once he calls, I'm thinking that the worst hand he possibly has is King Jack. So I'm thinking King Jack, King Queen, and I'm kind of aware that Kings is a possibility. I might anticipate that he c-bets aces more than Ace King or Pocket Kings, because that way at least somebody can have a king more frequently.
Yeah, that'd be very much my thinking. I think aces can bet here because there's 3 kings missing in action. Again, not to reveal my hand yet, but obviously I was surprised that Krissy led into us. My thinking as we went to the turn was I was trying to decide whether I should bet the turn when Krissy checked, as I anticipated she would, or whether I should check and let the recreational fire again. So I was kind of going through the same thought process as Krissy in terms of like, what will he check behind and what will he call with, and how different are those ranges?
Well, to the river, it comes the 7 of spades pairing the board. Krissy, you've voted up, and the chance that Dara is slow playing a bigger flop set is combinatorically reduced by a third, from 6 combos down to 4. You bet 650k into 1,035,000, just under 2/3 pot. What calling hand are you targeting for this sizing?
Well, I thought I was targeting like an ace king or a stubborn king queen. Maybe it looks like I have some silly bluff. Maybe I get some calls by things that check behind. In hindsight, I'm not sure about my sizing. You know, typically when we don't have a lot of bluffs, we would tend to go on a smaller sizing. But I thought that it would actually take bluffs out of my range. So that's why I decided to go bigger.
That's interesting. Well, Dara, in response to this bet, you shove for effectively 350k more, laying Krissy almost 8-1 on her money. She has to be beating you so infrequently in this spot, but she did let it go. Given your range of hands that take this line, is that an insanely tight fold from Krissy, or when you break it down, is it justifiable? I remember former guest Ludo tweeting at the time that you posted this hand first on Twitter that he'd be way, way, way too concerned that you would do this with aces 2 to find the fold with pocket 5s.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't do it with aces, that's for sure. I mean, it's an incredible fold. I thought when Krissy had put in so much, there's no way she's folding anything unless she's just on a mad one with 8-9 or something. And then as she tanked, I just thought to myself, oh my God, she's actually got 5s here and she's going to maybe fold. This is insane. I played quite a bit with Krissy online, obviously, as well, and she's made some very light calls against me, more usually correct than not. So the thought that she might get away from a set here just left me sick to my stomach, getting 8-1 on her money. And then afterwards, I was quite perturbed by the hand because I thought to myself, well, I think I just have kings here. I really struggled to find bluffs that I could have. And I spoke to Ludo more about it afterwards, and he said, yeah, maybe you're supposed to turn your weakest king into a bluff. That seemed to be the only candidate any of us could come up with. But yeah, I think in practice I have no bluffs here. I think the entire dynamic of the hand, for me at least, was clouded by the third player in the hand. He was the player I was focusing more on. Obviously I felt Krissy is not going to make a mistake post flop, therefore I'm focusing on what's the best way to get value from my top set from the third player in the pot.
That's so funny. I was thinking the exact same thing. And then I was like, whoa, and now you're shoving on me. I'm like, what the hell is happening?
Well, to kind of expand on Ludo's point there, let's say Dara has King Jack in this spot and finds himself getting to the river and, you know, obviously has a pretty easy fold. But does he then decide, well, maybe I have to turn my worst king, in Ludo's words, into a bluff, obviously blocking kings, and then make you fold a hand like that? Like, I don't think anyone can expect you to fold a hand like that. So the fact that you did and you're now advertising it to the world, have you put yourself in a very dangerous place, Krissy?
I know I am. I mean, one thing that comes to mind when you said that, and I might see it a little different than Ludo did, but I think sometimes in poker, there's just spots where we just don't have bluffs, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And just kind of accept that, especially a spot like this where, you know, that would have been a suicide bluff. I bet, 650 and you shoved 300k more? Even if you had aces and you decided to make the thin shove, again, it's like the tournament life aspect of it as well. So, actually, I think I could still rebuy at that period.
Well, this was actually a factor. This is what, for me, made the fold even more impressive because it was still re-entry. Yeah. So you were basically leaving yourself with 1/3 of a stack.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a really strong believer in poker in general that just because you think you have the top of your range and maybe he's turning king 10 into a bluff here. Okay, maybe, but it kind of looks like pocket kings. That's what it seems like. Sometimes maybe I'm wrong, and kind of like you said, I think online I tend to probably call in those spots more often and call lighter more frequently. But when you're completely present in a moment like that and you understand dynamics, the player who's unknown, we're both sort of playing the hand versus him. And I was thinking like, oh, I just want you out of the pot. I was trying to play it versus this guy. And it just becomes this interesting thing. But when you're fully present in a live situation like that, I just tend to make poker more simple in a sense of, do I think I have the best hand? And when you shoved, I was just thinking, I don't think my hand is good anymore. I don't see him shoving a worse hand. You know, one thing I try to remember in poker is when you don't pay someone off, that's kind of a win too. It's painful. Like, it was so painful to fold that. And I'm thinking like, am I horrible? What have I done? And then I'm thinking, why did I take this line on the turn? Why did I bet this size on the river? And then I just kind of, had the discipline enough in the moment to, I guess, trust myself.
I think it was an amazing fold. The hand upset me afterwards because I did think to myself, have I put myself in a spot here where I only have the nuts and therefore somebody can actually get away? But like you said, there are those situations, particularly in multi-way pots, where you just find yourself in a spot and you don't really have any bluffs.
I'm curious what you guys think about my river sizing, though. Do you think that there is merit to go smaller? Or bigger?
No, I do like the river sizing because I think most of the time I am sitting there with the king, basically, and that puts me under pressure then. I think if you bet smaller, I have an easier decision to call and just pure bluff catch, but it puts me in a tricky spot. And as you said, your image is also fairly wild. So
yep.
You're definitely capable of having a bluff in the spot as well, and that's going to play into my thought process if I am sitting there with a fairly weak one pair hand.
King queen or something.
Yeah,
and you know that I would probably 3-bet ace king preflop.
Yeah, just the board ran out so dry, it was very difficult to find absolute air in anybody's range here.
That's what I love about poker, though, is these tough spots. It was a fun hand.
Yeah. Immediately after the hand, I have a friend who, one of his bugbears is always, all these pros, they just fire around when it's re-entry and they'll fling their chips in because they know they can go and get a new stack.
Yeah.
So I immediately sent him this hand and see, Krissy got away from bottom set on this board, leaving us at 1/3 of a stack rather than flinging the chips in.
Yep.
Well, it sure was a fun hand. I think it was a 6-6 hand, to be honest, too. I recall being in a similar spot, being laid a similar price on a few occasions, hating it but not finding the fold. So kudos on finding it.
I think on Twitter I've seen it lately that people are just saying, no one ever bluffs. No one ever bluffs. It's like, yes, you could turn like King 10 into a bluff here, but like, do you? I wouldn't, you know?
Yeah, I wouldn't either. No, I think it's a very strong live tendency in general. Jack Sinclair always says when they put the big chips into the pot on the river, they have it.
Yeah, I think with a lot of poker content out there right now, making big folds is kind of the uncool thing to do. It's not cool to be bluffed.
Well, in the end, well played from both players. It's rare that you can say that. Krissy Bicknell, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks,
and thank you for not revealing that you did bluff me. I'm happy it was a good fold because I definitely lost sleep about it. So.
Yeah, I would love to be able to say I found some amazing bluff here, but actually I just felt sick after the hand thinking, how did I not get those 350,000?
I love that because when I talk to my friends a lot of the time about poker, you know, everyone says, oh, I lost this flip. And I'm like, don't focus on that. Think about the hands that you can control. And that's something I'm obsessed with is, did I get value? You know? And I think that that's such a great lesson that you're teaching in that is that you won a massive pot and you're still feeling bad about it because you're thinking, damn, how did I play it wrong? I should have got more value. So I think that's actually just a really good mindset to have in poker. And especially, you know, I've been on downswings and I think that that's the key to improving in poker and getting out of that downswing is that kind of logic.
Well, look, even more great advice there. Once again, thank you, Krissy.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Krissy.